This conference will now be recorded.
Hey everybody, it's Thursday, a little bit after 2:30. We had a little trouble getting the meeting going, but that's okay. We're here, uh, and I want to jump right in and get right to work. Yesterday we were looking at, as we have been for the past several days, we were talking about the letter that we received from the FDA. Now, the reason that we received the letter from the FDA is that we put the FDA in a position where they were required to send us a letter by law. Okay. Yes, of course, the FDA would love to just sit back and do nothing. Okay. They've got things exactly as they want it. Why would they want to do anything? Why would they want to change anything? Everybody's a drug addict. They're the hero. Okay. Um, there's no incentive for the FDA to change anything. In fact, I think there's a pretty strong incentive for them to continue the status quo, because once the truth is out, they lose all credibility. All right. So we forced the FDA into putting something in writing by sending in what's called a citizen's petition, sent it in December 16th, 2024. That gives the FDA 180 days to respond to the citizen's petition in writing. June 4th, we received the response in writing. And that's what we've been looking at over the past several days. And the FDA went so far as to pull a quote. They pulled a quote out of the out of our citizens petition, out of the citizens petition that I wrote, and they pulled a good quote. They pulled it off of page 2, and page 2 is what you see on your screen right in front of you. And the quote is in the second paragraph, and the quote says, "This is the quote that the FDA put in their letter. This petition requests the commissioner to immediately take every step possible to both stop the continuance of the genotoxicity, in other words, stop poisoning people, stop the continuance of the genotoxicity in the population, and supply the antidote, buprenorphine, and supply buprenorphine to those poisoned who are experiencing the symptoms of the poisoning and thus are in danger of imminent death." Now, they pulled that quote, and they pulled that quote to mock me and to mock you. By mocking me, they're also mocking you. Okay. And they said, "Oh, well, we're just too busy." Okay. Because they don't believe this. They still believe that you're a drug addict. Okay. They don't believe that when people experience opioid withdrawal, that they're experiencing a loss of control of their adrenal gland, that they're experiencing a surge in adrenaline. What the layperson knows is adrenaline, and we all know what adrenaline feels like. Medically, we know that as epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. And what's so ironic about that is that the quote they chose, okay, you can look on the screen in front of you. Right next to the quote are the Delle Study and the Kienbaum study. The Delle study from Sweden in 1990 and the Kienbaum study from Germany in 1998. By the way, where are the Americans? Where's the American research on this? I mean, it's just amazing. Okay. But the Delle study, let's look at that today. Okay. The Delle study to me is possibly the single most important study. Okay. And you can look it up. Okay. It's there right there in front of you. And I'm looking at the study right now. I'm looking at the abstract of the study. You got to get past the title. Don't get caught up in the title. I kind of ignore the title. See, people, these guys get hung up on the titles being too fancy. Okay, but I'm looking at the abstract, and it says the aim of the study was to examine regional changes in sympathetic nerve activity. Okay, regional means different areas of the body. So they were looking at the adrenal glands, they were looking at the gut, they were looking at different areas in the body. Okay, they were looking at some other things, but they were looking at sympathetic nerve activity. That's the nerve that controls the fight or flight. Okay, now those of you who have felt opioid withdrawal, you know there was something going on with that fight or flight. I mean, you never felt that way in your life. I've never experienced it. I'm not going to pretend that I know what it was like. But that's how y'all describe it to me, is that you've never felt anything like that in your life. And so now we know part of the reason you felt that way is your body lost control of the fight or flight system, the regional, sympathetic nervous system, SNA, sympathetic nervous system. Okay. And the other thing that Dell was studying was the adrenalines, epinephrine, norepinephrine. He called them catecholamines. That's what they are medically. The catecholamines are epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. We call them adrenaline. That's fine. So that's fine to call it adrenaline. Okay. And so This study was in 1990. And what Dell did was just the simplest thing in the world. He took opioid-dependent mice, put them into opioid withdrawal, and watched the nervous system and watched the adrenaline levels. Okay, nothing difficult about that. Don't get caught up in the heavy science. Don't get caught up in the titles. Okay, he just looked at the nerves, and he looked at the levels of adrenaline. That's easy to do. You look at the nerves, you watch the nerves, you watch the levels of adrenaline, bam, you put them into withdrawal, and you see what happens. And what Dell saw in 1990 was that the little nerves lost control. Some of them went completely haywire. The little nerve controlling the adrenal gland went completely haywire. It went haywire. The little nerve controlling the adrenal gland went haywire. Surged by 400%. And when the little nerve went haywire, guess what happened? The little nerve controlling the adrenal gland went haywire. Guess what happened? The adrenaline levels went sky high. I mean, that's not hard to figure out. You know, when you turn on the garden hose and we all did this as kids. You turn it on and you let it go and it just goes flying around everywhere. That's kind of what was happening here. Okay, you turn on the garden hose and you leave it on, you let go of it, just and the force of the water coming out just flies around everywhere. Well, that's kind of what happened here. The little nerve went haywire and the adrenaline just came rushing out. Okay, you lose control of the nerve controlling the adrenal gland, and you get a surge in adrenaline. This is just common sense, folks. There's nothing difficult about this. Nothing difficult about this at all. We're talking about just common sense. Okay, and this is a science that the FDA has to ignore. In order for them to call you a drug addict, they have to ignore that science. And amazingly, they chose a quote that was right next to the science they have to ignore. Now, I think what happened here was the lawyer that signed the letter. Okay, the lawyer that signed the letter, I don't think she really understands the science or really made an effort to understand the science. She didn't realize she took a quote right next to the Dell and Kinebaum studies because she's trusting the psychiatrist, and she's gonna stay with the psychiatrist right as the car goes over the cliff. As far as I'm concerned, her car has already gone over the cliff. What she did was just one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, that's just dumb. Okay, you ought to at least look at where we put the quote. It was not by accident that we put that quote next to the Dell and Kinebaum studies. We'll talk about the Kinebaum study on Monday. But it was not by accident we put that quote next to the image of those two studies. Okay, we did that so that if you pulled that quote, we wrote that quote so you're hoping you would pull it, but we were hoping that when you pulled that quote, you'd see the studies. And you'd realize that if you threw rocks at us, you're not hurting us, you're hurting yourself. You're not undermining our credibility. Okay, the FDA is not undermining our credibility with this letter, but the FDA is destroying their own credibility, mocking us with the quote. And this quote came right next to the Dell and the Kinebaum studies. Okay, and when we say at risk of imminent death, what we're talking about there is adrenaline toxicity. At risk, they're mocking us for saying at risk of imminent death. She's mocking us. Okay, what's her name? Carol Bennett. She's mocking us for saying at risk of imminent death. She is mocking us for saying at risk of imminent death. And yet the quote is right next to the Dell study, which showed a surge in adrenaline. Adrenaline will kill you fast. Adrenaline will kill you real fast. Okay, all the studies showing how fast adrenaline will kill. Not that they're that many, but those studies are in the citizens petition. We gave them all that information. I mean, the level of science they're ignoring in order for you to be a drug addict and for them to be right. And that's what this is about. Okay, that's all this is down to is they're in a position where they're just determined that they're going to be right. Okay, they're not right, they're wrong. And we got to get past the fact that they're wrong. Boy, I could go on about this for hours, but that's long enough for today. Let's hold right here. I don't think we have Charles with us today. I haven't heard Charles. Charles, if you're there, let me know. Otherwise, everybody have a great weekend. Okay. Monday, we'll look at the Kinebaum study. So Alex will stay with the same graphic for Monday. We'll look at the Kinebaum study. And the Kinebaum study, I mean, it's pretty simple. Kinebaum did with humans what most of what Dell or some of what Dell did with mice. Okay. Dell cut the little mouse open and hooked up voltmeters to the nerves. Kinebaum did not cut humans open and put meters on their nerves. But most importantly, Kinebaum took humans in opioid withdrawal and measured their adrenaline levels. And where Dell saw a 20-fold surge in adrenaline in mice, Kinebaum saw a 30-fold surge in adrenaline in humans, which makes sense because humans have a bigger adrenal gland. And that's the science that the FDA is just insisting doesn't exist. They're just ignoring it. Like it's not even there. All right, we'll hold there. Don't forget to like and subscribe us. Don't forget to post this podcast on your social media and everybody else's social media. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys again on Monday.